everybody, welcome to this episode of Nicole Stone Outdoors, and today we're going to go through A to Z on how you guys can find and catch fall crappie. So the first thing we're going to go over is how you guys can pick a lake. So if you don't already have a lake in mind, what I recommend you do is look at your local survey reports. Minnesota Lake Finder, North Dakota Game and Fish has one, and I'll have a link to a few of those below. A quick Google search will help you out with that. And then look for some smaller to mid-sized lakes with a healthy crappie population. That will help step you in the right direction. If you find lakes with a few different pools where they can congregate, some weed lines, and then you can really cover ground and find those fish. When you get to the massive lakes just starting out, it can be a real challenge because there's just too much water to cover. So again, I highly recommend looking at your resources. Look at a healthy population of crappie in a small to mid-sized lake. All right, so now we're out on the water, and the first thing we're gonna do is start covering transition areas. In the fall, I've found that a lot of times the fish start congregating up more and moving from the weeds where they're often scattered and more towards transitions into basins, which I think they end up heavily in early ice and then also at night. So we're gonna be finding them in those areas right now. So that means we're gonna be trying lots of different spots that have kind of deep bowls next to sharp weed lines, and we're gonna cover all those areas on this lake. Again, this is a very manageable lake. We're gonna have to put in our time looking at these spots, but that's the kind of structure we're gonna have to go through and rely on our electronics. Even simple 2D will do the trick when finding these fish. All right, you guys, so now we're gonna talk about your rod, reel, line setup. So what I like to use is any sort of ultralight. You're gonna want sensitivity on the end. You're gonna want that lighter setup. So try to find an ultralight rod. This is in 7.2. A lot of times the longer the better for panfish if you're in the weeds. If you're not, obviously anything works. So I have got an Apex Elite ultralight, and this is the perfect rod for the extra sensitivity on the end, but enough backbone in case I hook into one of those bigger fish or an accidental walleye. Now I've got a 4-pound mono on. I love 4-pound mono. That extra stretch is perfect for setting the hook on these little fish, but also I think they don't detect the bite quite as easily. And then also it's really easy to pair very fine and small jigs on, like the tungsten toad I'm using right now. And so find a smaller reel for panfish, or your ice rod reel will do really well. I just have a Fluger tree on here, really simple. And when you're looking for the perfect reel, just check for line weight. You're gonna wanna have a reel that can handle that 2 to 4 pound line, and that's what I've got here. So when you're finding a reel, look at the line weight, make sure it can get low enough. For a rod, get an ultralight rod. I've got the Tuned Up Custom Rods Apex Elite, perfect for sensitivity, plenty of backbone to handle a big crappie. And then for line, make sure you pair everything lightweight for those lightweight jigs. So for the line, I have this 4-pound mono. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Think lightweight when you're pan fishing. All right, you guys, so this is an example of a big school of crappie. They're larger marks, they're spaced out. And what we're doing is just slowly, we came in here quick, kind of saw some fish. Now we're slowly scanning the area with the trolling motor and then using our side imaging and down imaging to identify the fish. Really, down imaging and 2D sonar is what it is. And so once we see that big school, we're dropping down and we're going to keep moving to stay on the school of fish. So that is the next tip. You guys find these marks. You're going to have to move around with the trolling motor after you've scanned with your big motor and notice something, and then drop down. So let's catch them. There we go. Gentle hook sets, keep tension on the line. He's a real fighter, Matt. This is a big one. I need the net. Nice one. I love these fish. Woo! Woo! There you go. Beautiful crappies. There you go. You guys can use your ice tackle doing this. When you need a more finesse bite, I love using ice jigs, little tungstens like this tungsten toad. But there's time for hair jigs and all of that. So what I'm going to do is show you guys my 5 favorite baits that I like to use when crappie fishing this time of year. Hey you guys, so when you guys are looking now for the lure to put at the end of your line, I have a couple recommendations for everybody starting out this year, and obviously my favorite lures that I think you'll find success with too. So, a couple things. First of all, I like having a variety of sizes and a variety of weights. I believe fall rates can make a big difference depending on if it's a tough bite or an easy bite. And then I also love things like a hair jig to throw in, plastics to keep on hand. If you're on a hot crappie bite, having plastics is the best thing because you're not having to worry about replacing that minnow all the time. And so when you have a big school with a lot of competition, I highly recommend having some on hand. You guys know I love Bobby Garland. Moglo jigs, their Moglo plastics are fantastic. This is the itty bitty swimars. They work perfect with a tungsten toad or a smaller Crappie Pro. Any small jig, these are perfect, these sizes for that finesse bite. I got a couple different colors and a couple different styles here. I have crappie shooters, which I just found the other day, and they like shoot up randomly. For jigs, I also love, I have a few favorites I've talked about a lot. So first of all, tungsten toad that we've been using heavily today. I've been finding the smaller jigs are turning over more fish, and the tungsten is heavier, so it gets down faster in these big schools. Very good. Been tipping these with a minnow today. It's been working great. I've got the Crappie Moglo, the Moglo jig. You guys have seen this in so many of my ice videos, and it's because it works great for both. It's very horizontal, and it's lead. So something Anna taught me was lead can sometimes be a big benefit because it's got a slower fall. And sometimes they want a bigger jig with a slower fall, and you're going to want to go with something like this. So this is a Moglo jig. They do have glow colors. Check it out. Love this, and it pairs perfectly with plastics. You guys have seen a lot of big fish caught on that. I've got a teardrop jig from VMC. I like this because it kind of got a much shorter shank and is just kind of a fun little thing to have, especially if you're using like worms or something instead. So I always keep one of these on hand. And then a classic white hair jig. A lot of success with these. Everyone should have a good white hair jig on hand at all times. So be sure to add that as well. I do like using bobbers. However, I tend to use that a lot more in spring, early summer. In the fall, I find that a little bit more of a classic jig, slow reel bite is going to be key. And then even this time of year, I'll dig out the ice gear. I've got a Panoptic system here right now, but traditionally I wouldn't have that. I'd actually have my ice flasher and be using that to work these fish up. So hopefully you guys find that beneficial. A few more of my plastics, anything from Bobby Garland, I'll link below. I really love having any of those with that extra tail, some Mr. Twisters. That type of thing is fantastic when you guys are out there trying to crush the crappie. When you are hooking this, I have a tiny tungsten toad here, which has been killing it. And I just go through the very front of the nose. I don't go through the brains because I still want him to kick like that. Like I want there to be action. And this has really been key for catching a lot of the fish today. All right, let's see. Got another one. This is what's awesome. So I've got a super lightweight setup. That's going to be key. When you're reeling them in from the deeps, you do want to take it slow. Because I have a lightweight setup, I need to net. Alright, you guys. Look what's in there. Beautiful fish. He devoured that. We're just sitting right in that school. Lost it. Set it a little too hard. That's another tip. Real gentle hook sets when you guys are dealing with these crappie and mono. Alright, you guys, so now that school kind of, like all crappie schools, they kind of meander around. We're just going to keep following this little bit of structure here and just trying to stay on them. So we're going to slowly move around until we pick them up on our down imaging again, and then we're going to keep fishing. Hey guys, I hope this is really helpful in how you guys can find and catch crappie. Again, we're going to go through these steps. 1, do your research first. Find lakes that you can handle to break down. That's going to be key. 2, look for transition structure in the fall. Look for weed lines next to deep bowls, and then you're going to have to search between those spots using your electronics if you can, using mapping on your phone if you have to find those fish. A simple 2D sonar can do wonders for identifying crappie. You don't have to get fancy. You guys have been seeing it on my screen. The 2D does everything you need. Side imaging, Garmin Live Scope, it's going to make it even easier. But you definitely don't need that to find success catching crappies. You just have to be willing to cover ground when you're on them. Use a lightweight setup, a light rod, a light reel, a light line. 2 to 4 pound line. You're going to want to use an ultralight rod, and you're going to want to use a reel that can handle light line. 2 to 4, 6 pound line. That's going to be key when identifying the right reel for you. Bargain stuff is great. I love my tuned up custom rod. Highly recommend that. I will link that below. Then when you're on them, you're just going to want to beep bop around with the trolling motor, simply because that's going to help you stay on the fish for longer. And when you see them down there, just always try to do a slow reel. Most of the mistakes I see people make is that they don't allow their jig to get to the bottom because they get too impatient and they reel too fast. So you're going to want to reel nice and slow and steady when you guys are trying to catch these fish. So hopefully that helps you out, and please leave any questions below, and I'll see you on the next episode.